So, Sgt. Pepper's 50th Anniversary Super Deluxe Edition box set took me by surprise back in 2017. Then, in 2018, I was wowed by the White Album's 50th Anniversary Super Deluxe Edition. Finally, in 2019, I was astonished by the auditory accomplishments audited on the freshly asphalted 50th Anniversary Super Deluxe Edition of Abbey Road. After revisiting the original album mixes in various formats, I enjoyed absorbing the Giles Martin remixes, the demos, and the numerous outtakes, in addition to all the informative text and visual extras featured in the detailed books included with the Super Deluxe box sets released over the past 3 years. We Beatles fans are afflicted with a mental disorder. The label of this disorder was most recently updated in the latest edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, from Beatlemania to bipolar disorder. Due to this disorder, Beatle fanatics transition from the elation associated with a new release to a state of anxiety, pondering, what's next? There has been the recent announcement of a November 22nd, 2019 release. This will be a limited edition vinyl box set of 23 7-inch singles, creatively titled the Singles Collection. Beyond that, let's continue to explore the answer to that inevitable question on the minds of those afflicted with bipolar disorder. What's next? The obvious choice for the next remix project is the album you see before you. At this point, Let It Be is the final Beatles album yet to see a 50th anniversary, though hopefully it will not be the final Beatles remix project. In late January of 2019, Apple Corps and Wingnut Films officially announced that Sir Peter Jackson, best known for his film adaptations of The Lord of the Rings, would be working on a new film. Based around 55 hours of never-released footage of the Beatles in the studio shot between January 2nd and January 31st, 1969. Jackson went on to say, "The 55 hours of never-before-seen footage and 140 hours of audio made available to us ensures this movie will be the ultimate fly-on-the-wall experience the Beatles fans have long dreamt about. It's like a time machine transports us back to 1969, and we get to sit in the studio watching these four friends make great music together." Aww. The announcement further revealed that a restored version of the original Let It Be movie directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg will also be made available. This being said, there has been no release date given at this time, nor has there been an official announcement of a 50th Anniversary Super Deluxe edition of Let It Be in the works. Of course, these announcements aren't generally made too far in advance, so I would like to point out that May 8th, 2020 is the actual 50th anniversary of the release of Let It Be. Conveniently, this date falls on a Friday. Perfect for a release date, wouldn't you say, Apple Corps? As far as information pertaining to a Let It Be box set, let's consider this for a moment. In September 2019, Beatles historian Kevin Howlett hosted an exclusive live broadcast for Sirius XM from Abbey Road Studios on the 50th anniversary of Abbey Road's British release. One special guest included in this broadcast was none other than Giles Martin. Giles Martin has been involved in numerous Beatles remix projects over the years, including, of course, the anniversary editions of Pepper, the White Album, and most recently Abbey Road. During his interview, Martin made a comment referencing his recent work remixing the Beatles' rooftop concert. He didn't specifically state if this was related to the films being worked on or part of a planned audio release, but it's exciting news nonetheless. Now let's take a look at some history of Let It Be. From the original LP release and one other analog source, then skipping over to the digital age. Sorry, you 8-track fans out there.
Can you take me back where I came from? Can you take me back?
The final album by the Beatles was released in the UK on the 8th of May, 1970. It preceded the film of the same name, which hit theaters later that month. The original British version was presented as a box set, including a single-sleeve LP and a glossy 164-page book of photos and printed transcriptions of dialogue from rehearsals and sessions for the album. This version was limited in production and is quite collectible today. Since I have never owned a UK box set, I've placed links in the description below to other YouTube videos that will give you a look at that item in detail. What I do have to show you is an original US early pressing of Let It Be with the Red Apple label. This was passed down to me by the previous owners. The US Let It Be was presented as a gatefold sleeve with photos by Ethan Russell. The inner sleeve was plain white paper, and side one, instead of the familiar green apple, featured a whole red apple on the label. According to an article by Anthony Rasmussen on liveabout.com, because the Let It Be album was actually a soundtrack album, in the US, the record was being distributed by the United Artists Company, not Capitol Records. To signify this, they gave it red apple logos. The song Maggie May is credited as simply PD for public domain. Subsequent pressings had the song credited to PD, arranged by Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, Starkey. The Matrix number is etched into the dead wax. This album was widely counterfeited, but true copies feature specific additional etchings in the runout. Look closely to see the words Bell Sound and the initials SF, followed by a line and triangle symbol. This information indicates the studio at which the lacquer was cut, the engineer who did the cutting, Sam Freeman, and the crude representation of a Winchester rifle, indicating the record was pressed at Capitol Records pressing plant in Winchester, Virginia. Also etched in the dead wax are the names Phil and Ronnie, a nod to Phil and Ronnie Spector. Phil Spector being the producer brought in by John and George to put together the Let It Be album that was ultimately released in 1970. The Side 2 label features the cut apple, with the red apple theme still very apparent. As with Side 1, the runout of Side 2 also features the Matrix number, cutting info, and the Phil and Ronnie shoutout. The original US LP was a more recent addition to my collection. My first listen to an analog source was via cassette, back in the late 1980s. While it's most certainly not even close to being from a first batch of Let It Be cassettes, this is the original cassette I bought as a young Beatles fan 30 years ago. As you can see, it was released as a very no-frills edition, but I didn't care. It was all about the music then, and as much as I appreciate the modern extras, the main focus being the music remains true today. In the mid-90s, I upgraded to the 1987 digital remaster compact disc version of Let It Be. The packaging did little to improve upon the cassette version, but at least it did attempt to somewhat replicate the back cover of the LP. It was only years later that I realized there are many pressing variations to the old 87s. The most obvious of these variations being that, when originally released, the Apple logo was not featured anywhere on the packaging or discs due to unsettled business matters with Apple Corps. Since my purchase of the Let It Be CD was not made until the mid-1990s, the pressing I first purchased did have the Apple logo. I've included these photos of an early pressing CD versus a later pressing to show where the logo was placed sometime in the early 1990s to replace the Appleless version that were released in the late 1980s. I bet some of you watching will be dusting off your old 87 Let It Be CD to see if you have an early or later pressing. In 1996, the final 2 CD set of Anthology was released, Disc 2 featured recordings from the time period encompassing the Beatles' final recordings that would make up the Let It Be and Abbey Road albums. Despite Let It Be ultimately being the final album by release date, it was actually mostly made up of their penultimate recordings from January 1969. No fewer than a dozen tracks on Disc 2 of Anthology 3 are derived from those sessions. Abbey Road was not recorded until later in the year, so technically, Abbey Road is the Beatles' final album. But that's a debate for another video. Let It Be does contain music recorded during the Beatles' last session together before the breakup. According to the liner notes included with Anthology, the Harrison song, I Me Mine, was recorded on January 3, 1970. However, John Lennon was on holiday and did not attend the session. Let It Be has the distinction of being the first complete Beatles album to be approved for remixing. Let It Be Naked was released in 2003. It was an attempt to create an album closer to the original intention of the back-to-basics approach without overdubs or overproduction. If there's anyone who knows anything about overproduction, it's this guy. As well as alternate cover art, Let It Be Naked came with a nice booklet, which featured more Ethan Russell photos, an essay by Kevin Howlett, and extracts from the original Let It Be book that was included with the 1970 UK box set I referenced earlier. The tracks themselves were mixed and produced by the same Abbey Road staff that would bring us the 2009 remasters. Gone were most of the production choices of Phil Spector. No more orchestral or choral overdubs. The track listing was altered, and Don't Let Me Down was wisely added. However, Dig It, Maggie May, and the bits of banter between songs were eliminated. It definitely makes for a more polished, tighter sounding album, but I personally still enjoy the Phil Spector version, especially his production on The Long and Winding Road. It just doesn't sound quite right to me without the Spectorization. I'm just glad the world has both versions of Let It Be available. Now, if only we had the Glenn Johns Get Back added to the mix. Also worth noting is that the naked version of Let It Be included an additional disc labeled as Fly on the Wall. This second CD was intended to be, as indicated in the liner notes, a unique insight into the Beatles at work in rehearsal and in the studio during January 1969. As much as I respect Kevin Howlett, who compiled and edited the Fly on the Wall material, I think I speak for most fans when I unequivocally state that the disc was a complete missed opportunity. The total running time was less than 22 minutes of the previously mentioned 140 hours of material available. No sooner does anything get going before it's cut off or blended into the next micro snippet. I'm not really sure what the point was of taking up a whole CD for the very limited amount of material included. It's one of the great disappointments in Beatle release history.
I put a lot of money and thought into the whole thing.
As of the release of this video, the present state of Let It Be blurs 10 years in the past. What remains commercially available at present is the digitally remastered versions of Let It Be that came out a decade ago. CD, vinyl, streaming services, and broadcasters are still using these excellent remasters. Let It Be was last remastered for compact disc in 2009. The digital remaster was created from the original analog master tapes, and this version is still widely available today as part of the original studio recording CD box set or sold individually. The front cover LP artwork is reproduced, and it opens out as a nicely constructed tri-fold cardboard sleeve with additional photos. There is an expanded booklet with Kevin Howlett and Mike Heatley provided historical notes, some of which are referenced in this video. The booklet also includes rare photographs, recording notes, and complete credits. The disc face replicates the Green Apple label as featured on the original UK LP. The back cover LP artwork is also reproduced. While no longer being manufactured, if you have the opportunity, another way of listening to the Beatles' 2009 digital remasters is the 2009 USB memory stick, containing high-quality 44.1 kHz 24-bit FLAC files. In 2010, the 09 remaster of Let It Be as part of the entire Beatles catalog, became available on iTunes and continues to be so at present. Also still available is the vinyl version of the 2009 digital remaster that was first released in 2012, manufactured on 180-gram vinyl with replicated artwork. I will also mention this Japanese edition. Periodically re-released in limited quantities, this mini LP replica sleeve of Let It Be was first released in 2014. The one featured here is an encore pressing from early 2015. This is another edition which made use of the 2009 remasters, this time on the SHM CD format. After the UK box set was deleted in November 1970, Let It Be was subsequently sold as a standalone LP, in a standard record sleeve with the standard green apple on the reverse of the LP sleeve. This edition is a replication of the first pressing. From the glossy front LP artwork, the plain white inner sleeve, and green apple on the label, to the original back LP artwork with red apple and the spine title. It's an excellent replica. Since Let It Be was only ever released in stereo, it was not included with the 2009 in mono CD box, so this mini LP edition is a nice complement to that set. In 2015, the Beatles catalog, including Let It Be of course, went live on streaming services, just in time for Christmas. You can still stream away today. Finally, the Beatles channel debuted in 2017 and broadcasts on Sirius XM Radio, Channel 18. I mention this because, in addition to a great deal of other quality content, you can often hear tracks from Let It Be on this channel. That's my overview of past and present formats on which I listen to Let It Be, and a showing of my collection of Let It Be as of the time of making this video.
The future still looks good.
So, to quote the great philosopher and poet Thomas Petty, the future is wide open. When a 50th anniversary Super Deluxe edition of Let It Be is released, what will be in it? Let's say it's released in May of next year, 2020. How will it be presented? What would you like to see included? What are some of your wish list items? A new remix would be the starting point, but this gets complicated. Will the Phil Spector version be honored and remain the source for the remix? It's no secret that Paul McCartney has never been thrilled with the way Phil Spector produced the album. Personally, when I first heard Let It Be, back before I knew anything about George Martin or Phil Spector, I didn't find it jarring at all to hear the Beatles with orchestral overdubs. They'd certainly done it before, so without knowing the original intention of the Get Back project, I quite enjoyed it. Without any outside bias attached to it, it's one of my favorite Beatles albums. That being said, I think the remix of 2003 was quite well done. Will a new mix reference Let It Be Naked at all? Then there's the matter of sessions outtakes. There's just so much material available, I can't imagine how the folks at Apple will approach this, but I hope there will be some quality sounding, interesting material included. The full version of Dig It would be welcome, and rare material of songs never officially released would be great. An absolute must-have is a good quality version of the rooftop concert. It seems a given we fans would really love to have this final live public performance officially released in an audio format. The book to be included in a box set is another complication. Will the material from the original 1970 UK book be included? The books from 1970 are very delicate. The binding breaks easily, and most fans who have a copy are so damn afraid to open the thing, it'd be nice to have a copy people can actually look at and enjoy. I like the idea of a new film being made out of the unseen footage from the Get Back sessions. I think it's a great idea, and I can't wait to see what Peter Jackson comes up with. I'm also thrilled that the original film is finally getting the attention it deserves after being so overlooked. Honestly, I've only seen the Let It Be movie a handful of times on VHS. I haven't really had the desire to purchase a poor quality bootleg DVD, So I've been waiting for this release to get the chance to revisit the original film. Another question related to the release of the film is, will a Super Deluxe Box Set have a Blu-ray containing it? Or will the movie be completely separate from the album release, similar to the way John Lennon's Imagine album was released as a box set in 2018 with a separate Blu-ray disc of video content released on the same day. Perhaps the original movie could be part of the Super Deluxe Box Set, while the new Peter Jackson documentary could be a standalone item. So a Let It Be Super Deluxe Box Set gets somewhat complicated, and there are many different ways it could be presented. Ultimately, what will Let It Be? What are your thoughts? I'd love to read some discussion on what the future holds for this upcoming 50th anniversary in May 2020. In the meantime, until we get an official announcement, we'll just have to manage our bipolar disorder as best we can and let it be.
I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the group and ourselves, and I hope we pass the audition.